Welcome back to part 2 of my Sweeney Todd analysis. In this video, I'll be using a lot of musical jargon as well as referencing things in the previous video, so please watch part 1 if you haven't already. The link is in the description box below. In the previous video, I discussed how prevalent the medieval song of death, the Dies Irae, is in the opening of Sweeney Todd. In this video, we'll continue to look at the Dies Irae. It is important to note that the Dies Irae doesn't make any leaps larger than the major third, exactly 4 half steps. This is reflected in the ballad. Every phrase is held together by notes that move either second or third. There'd be the occasional leap, but those leaps aren't really the meat of the sandwich here, and seem to be more of a jumping point to an upbeat to get things started. And during this point too, we have yet another quotation of the Dies Irae appearing in the extreme high range with the piccolo, the down-up motion.
He kept a shop in London town.
We've had nothing but low middle register sounds and voices up until then, and then to suddenly have a contrast of a lone high piccolo supported by the violins, providing this ethereal cloud at the top. For this, however, credit is due to Sweeney Sondheim's longtime orchestrator, Jonathan Tunick. On the piccolo's third entrance, it seems that it might be finally quoting the Dies Irae in Ho.
And what if none of their souls were saved? They went to their maker impeccably shaved.
Instead of getting this, we get this instead. And then that little tail at the end, as if Sondheim is saying, just kidding, but yeah, fine. It is also not quite like the Dies Irae because the intervals are slightly different. For example, the first 3 notes are separated by a whole step instead of the Dies Irae's half steps. But that's alright because that becomes the melody of our upcoming B section. Yada yada yada, third verse. A lot of the same stuff. This time we have something new played by our piccolo and oboe. Here it is by itself. Yep, you'll hear a lot of that in the rest of the show, but going on for now. This time once again it sounds like Sondheim is going to do the Dies Irae. But instead of ending it with the wrong pitch, he does the correct pitches but keeps going past its expected stopping point. And once again the intervals are slightly different than those of the Dies Iraes. Yada yada yada, we have section C that just has a bunch of those dense counterpoints that Sondheim is famous for. Voices start coming in, singing different things, building towards a climax. Another additional device Sondheim uses was his use of words. At the start of the ascent towards the climax, we have a lot of gentle words. S's and R's. Smooth, subtle, Sweeney, rat. And then as more voices come in, the words get rougher. A lot of K sounds, inconspicuous, quick, quiet, clean. A brief relatable sidetrack. Another song that probably uses alliteration the best is My Friends. The beginning of that song is very intimate as Sweeney sings towards his knives. We get S, F, and F sounds like these friends see, glisten, this shines, smiles, faithful whisper, and etc.
These are my friends. See how they glisten. See this one shine, how he smiles in the light. My friend, my faithful friend.
Back to the ballad. Yada yada yada, final verse.
He served a dark and vengeful God.
He served a dark and vengeful God.
What happened then? Well, that's the play, and he wouldn't want us to give it away.
And listen carefully, did you catch that in the flute and oboe? We finally had our first complete and perfect Dies Irae, and with the correct intervals. And the best part is that this happens right under Sweeney's line, "What happens then? Well, that's the play, and he wouldn't want us to give it away."
What happened then? Well, that's the play, and he wouldn't want us to give it away.
Guess what? Mr. Stephen Sondheim just gave it away by quoting the entirety of the Dies Irae. Death, 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 death. is going to happen in this play. Another time in the musical that the Dies Irae is quoted fully and completely is in the song Epiphany, which purposefully lands at almost the halfway point of the musical. In this scene, Sweeney is angry that he missed his chance to get revenge on the judge, so he's cursing the world and running around threatening to kill everybody, as well as the audience members.
But not for long. They all deserve to die. Tell you why, Mr.
It is played by the violas and it's quite easy to miss.
But not for long. They all deserve to die. Tell you why.
So this undertones the majority of that song. The very last reprise of the ballad also quotes the Dies Irae in whole, but only because it's almost like a repeat of the first ballad.
To seek revenge may lead to hell.
But everyone does it if seldom as well.
So the first ballad, the last ballad, and the Epiphany are the 3 times in the show that the Dies Irae is quoted in its entirety. And it does seem that Sondheim used the entirety of the Dies Irae very selectively and used it where it is most effective in telling the story. Stay tuned for the next videos as we continue our descent into the music of Sweeney Todd.